Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good evening, and you may be seated. Mandy Dowdy, that was awesome. Though we're not at a football game this evening, I kind of feel like we could be. That was great. Again, my name is Joseph Backholm. It's my pleasure to be with you tonight as we go through this excellent event, the Family Foundation of Virginia's 2024 Richmond Gala. Why am I here tonight? Well, first, I have 4 teenagers. Actually, my oldest just turned 20, so as of 2 weeks ago, I have 3 teenagers and a 20-year-old, but they wanted somebody who was really good at speaking to people who weren't listening to them. So Victoria called me to come to Virginia and say, will you do this event with us? Now, speaking of teenagers, this is kind of like Thanksgiving, because not only do we have a kids' table, we have an entire kids' room, which I believe we will see on the screen. So say hello to the overflow room, where the future is joining us this evening, and our speakers will be making their way at various times over to be with them as well. And we are encouraged to have the young and enthusiastic with us, as well as the not young and the wise. So, another announcement for this evening. I know many of you have come with devices in your pockets that may ring. The rule for this evening is if yours happens to make noise, I get to answer it. And you probably don't want that to happen. Now, a little bit about me and what we're doing here this evening. My family and I, we now live in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I'm originally from Washington State. And when I was young, I told my parents that when I grow up, I'd like to be a politician. And they said, well, you can't do both. And so I went to law school instead. But in reality, we make a lot of jokes about politicians, but they should have known it was coming. Just think about the etymology of politics itself. Poly meaning many, ticks meaning blood-sucking insects. It's the nature of the world, and you should have seen it coming, to be sure. But why am I here specifically? Before I moved to Raleigh, I had Victoria's job. Victoria Cobb, I know many of you know her already. She'll be up here in a moment. But I had her job in Washington State, and for 10 years. And so I have lived the challenge of this life and this organization and this work and the things that we are all doing here tonight. And so it really is my pleasure to be able to partner with you, to join with you and the Virginia Family Foundation in the work that we are doing together here in Virginia and around the nation. And I presently work, among other things, as a senior fellow for the Family Research Council. It's an organization I know many of you will be aware of, does similar work in the nation's capital. And because we are only weeks away from an election of huge national significance, I just want to take a moment and make sure that we are aware of the crossroads that we are at as a country. Because we know the Family Foundation is here to represent religious freedom, to represent the value of life and families and parental rights and those issues. What happens if an election in November goes the wrong way? It's important that we be sober-minded about this, and these are the things that we're working on in DC right now. With a trifecta of progressive leadership in Washington, D.C., something that realistically could happen very soon is that the Senate ends the filibuster and passes legislation that eliminates all pro-life protections around the country by essentially enshrining the right to kill your children before they are born if they so desire. Also, efforts that have been stalled for a while but are very serious to have a federal takeover of state elections, which would essentially eliminate voter ID requirements, require the mailing of ballots, which is simply essentially a request or even a mandate to have unsecure elections. There is a strong possibility that we would have 2 more states added. Why would Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico become states in the benefit of a progressive majority in Washington, D.C.? Because they believe that they would bring with them 4 more senators. And those 4 more senators, a progressive majority would be confident, would vote the way they would like them to vote. And we know the margins are so narrow that if that happened, you do not need to change the Constitution to add states. Congress can do that and would do that because of the perceived electoral advantages. In addition, we're all aware that tens of millions of people have come into the country illegally in recent years. There is also a desire to grant amnesty, which would include voting rights for all of those who have done so. Should that happen, you would see states like Texas become California in a matter of months because of the expected political implications of those decisions. In addition, what happens when they are able to expand the Supreme Court with these majorities as they would like to? An expanded Supreme Court with 13 justices instead of 9, all of whom would certainly side with the left wing of the court, would almost certainly eliminate the First Amendment as we understand it today when it comes to the free exercise of religion, the freedom to live out our beliefs in the public square, in the marketplace, even in our schools and in our churches. The freedom of speech would similarly be at risk, and we've seen the various ways in which the instinct to revoke civil liberties has been held back by a Supreme Court that still believes in the First Amendment as it was originally constructed. But make no mistake, that reality is at risk. So, there's so much on the line for us, but we also know that God is good, and we know that we are the solution to this problem. And this is why we are here. We want to be sober-minded about the world that we live in, but it's also the reason why we care, why we engage, and why we gather, and why we support the Family Foundation of Virginia. Now, Tonight's gala would not be possible without many, many sponsors. You can see a complete list inside your program, but I'd like to highlight a few. Please hold your applause until I finish reading all of the names. First, our platinum sponsors. There are 2 anonymous sponsors. In addition, Done Right Ranch, John and Margaret Whitlock. Our gold sponsors are anonymous. I also would like to recognize our silver sponsors, Rob and Kathy Cox, Estes Express Lines, Rubel and Sharon Horde, Steve and Renee Hupp, Robert and Marlene Mallory, Chris and Marilyn Meyer, Mac and Lorna Nichols, the Southern Baptist Convention of Virginia, John and Shirley Siebert, in memory of Lawrence A. Tate, Glenn and Jory Wiley. I'd also like to thank our 5-star sponsors, anonymous, as well as Larry and Lori Simpson. And there are many others who are 4, 3, 2, and 1-star sponsors. We say thank you to each of you for your part in making this night a huge success. Thank you all. And next, we would like to honor the Family Foundation board members who have joined us tonight. Please stand as a group so that we may recognize you and your service to Virginia families. If you are a board member. Thank you so much. And I will add, as somebody who has been part of the National Network of Family Policy Councils, the Virginia Family Foundation Board truly is exemplary, and you are blessed to have them, and thank you all for your leadership. We also want to recognize state and government elected officials we have with us this evening. If you would, please stand as I call your name, but please hold your applause until all our state officials have been announced. Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, Delegate Mike Cherry, Delegate Mark Early Jr., Delegate Ann Farrell Tata, Delegate Tom Garrett, Delegate Chris Runyon, and Delegate Scott Wyatt. And any other current elected officials I may have missed, including those at the local level, please stand to be recognized. Thank you for your service. Now, in addition, we are honored to have a number of previously elected officials in the room, including Governor Jim Gilmore, former Attorney General Mark Early, if you would stand, the Honorable Doug Domenech, and the Honorable Rita Beal, former Deputy Attorney General. Thank you also for your service and for joining us this evening. Now, before I introduce our next speaker, I want to make sure, and it sounds like many of you have already started, but please eat your salad and your meal will be served shortly. It is my distinct honor to introduce our first guest speaker, Virginia's Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. Winsome is a native of Kingston, Jamaica, and immigrated to the United States at the age of 6. She's proud to have served in the United States Marine Corps. Winsome was first elected in 2002 to a majority Black House of Delegates district, a first for a Republican in Virginia since 1865. She's been a strong and unwavering voice for families in Virginia throughout her term and is currently a Republican candidate for the office of Virginia Governor. Please welcome to the stage Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears.
Well, hello to you. I've been trying to make sure that I don't have any salad stuck on my teeth. It is really good to be with you today. And if we can just maybe take a moment of silence for those of our wonderful fellow Virginians who have suffered greatly, actually, with Hurricane Helene having come through. There's so many impassable roads and houses destroyed. So please, just a quick moment of silence for them. Thank you. All right. So, again, good to be with you all. And I want to start with a verse. Imagine that. And it's actually a verse from my last campaign, Psalm 133, verse 1. How good and pleasant it is when brothers and sisters live together in peace and harmony. Yes, that verse, that psalm, beautifully encapsulates the strength and the blessing that's found in community and family. When we come together in unity, bound by a shared faith, common purpose, we become more than just individuals. Of course, we become a powerful force for good. This unity is not fleeting. It is not a feeling, but it's a profound gift from God. It is a blessing that propels us to support and uplift one another. It helps us to stand firm in our beliefs and to be the light in the world that is so desperately needed today. This is what makes each of you who make up the family in the Family Foundation so important. You are the living testament to the power of faith when it is shared and nurtured within families. So, I want to express my deep gratitude to the Family Foundation, who supported me 20 years ago when I first ran for office. I was just a child then. Your dedicated leadership and every single member here, we thank you for your tireless commitment to shared values. But when we think of Family Foundation, who do we think of? Who comes to mind? Ladies and gentlemen, is it Victoria who comes to mind? Is it the staff that comes to mind? Because they come to mind because they're always visible, they're always noticeable. If, when we think of the Family Foundation, we think of the staff and we think of Victoria, we have lost. Why do I say that? Well, because it means that the Family Foundation is not effective, because when you think of Planned Parenthood, what do you think of? Do you think of a juggernaut? Of course you do. And that is who the Family Foundation must be seen as, a juggernaut. An invincible juggernaut. And so, when you see the emails come that asks you to show up, to help us to demonstrate, to write your elected officials, to go visit your elected officials, to donate, those in power must believe that there's a juggernaut of people, not just Victoria, not just her staff. Because why? Well, they say that politicians can't read, but we can count. You are the voice for the voiceless, advocating for the sanctity of life and ensuring that every child conceived is recognized as a precious gift, a precious gift. You champion the cause of parents. You deserve to be supported, parents, not hindered, by your school administrators and government, you have a noble task in raising your children with strong values and moral clarity. You believe, as I do, that government is best when it is limited, that we must defer to the family, to our faith, the private sector, whenever possible, that this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So your advocacy, Family Foundation, combined with the efforts of the Youngkin administration, has already made significant strides in strengthening the economic foundations of our wonderful Commonwealth, in revitalizing our education system, in enhancing public safety, and most importantly, supporting families who are the backbone of Virginia. I always like to say, the first form of government is self-government. And if you don't govern yourself, well, somebody's going to do it for you. The second form of government, I like to think, is the family, because it is in the family that the child learns how to be, how to comport themselves, the right and the wrong. And if that foundation is destroyed, the country cannot be too far behind. That's why we need the Family Foundation. The policies that you advocate, hardworking families that you support, school options, parental empowerment, again, in education, the support for law enforcement is all very necessary. These are not just paper issues, they are tangible, positive change that will impact lives. But, my friends, we cannot afford to become complacent. It's that juggernaut that we want, that effect. The challenges we face are many, and the tasks have never been higher. This November, I have heard someone say we are voting for the lesser of two evils. And somebody else corrected and said, no, we are voting for the lessening of evil. Which of the two will lessen evil? That's what this is about. Because we have no less, and I like to talk about policy on the national level, and then there's international policy, because let me tell you, China, North Korea, Russia is watching, and if they sense weakness in America, they will move. We know this. So we must come with renewed vigor to elect leaders who will champion the values that we hold dear. Leaders who understand that our freedoms are not granted by the government, but by the Creator Himself. These are our God-given rights, and the Founding Fathers absolutely knew that, because none other than Benjamin Franklin, when the Constitutional Convention could not come to an agreement, he said to them that they had studied the governments of previous empires, the Greeks, etc., and they found none of them to be lasting. And then they understood, when they read Isaiah 33 and 22, that the Lord is our God, the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our king, the Lord is our lawgiver. And from there, you know, we got the three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. We're going to fight because there is no other way to move. We're going to fight the good fight of faith. Again, it's not a passive call. You know, it's that part of the Bible where Moses was told, "Go say to Pharaoh, let my people go." That was a prophet who was sent to a politician. Imagine that. And then we also know that Jesus himself had something to say about this when he was told that the Pharisees came to him and said, "Herod Antipas wants to kill you." And Jesus said to them, "Go tell that fox that I will keep on casting out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and the third day I will accomplish my purpose." So, how many foxes are you going to tell where to go? Exactly. You're not alone in this fight. I am here with you. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder. I urge you to continue the noble work. You are the stewards of this movement, and it is your continued dedication that will carry us forward. So, let us go forth with faith, with courage, and with unity. Let us continue to be the light that shines in the darkness. Let us make the darkness tremble. Because that is our call. Together we will protect the future of our great Commonwealth. We will protect our nation. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you and to give you peace. God bless you.
Well, good evening. I think it's pretty clear to see that America is in a moral crisis. Across our nation, there are so many people who call themselves Christians, but seem to have forgotten what it actually means to walk out this life in honor of the Lord. A lot of the blame for that, I think, lies at the hands of our pastors, not those that are in the room today, but many across the nation who have dressed the bride of Christ in garb that God never intended. They have watered down the message that they are called to preach, so much so that there's no conviction in it anymore. So as a result, those of us who are Christians have gotten quiet. The problem with our silence is the other side is now speaking louder. So shame on us for allowing that to happen. I think elected leaders have also forgotten who it is that they are elected to serve first. There are so many that call themselves followers of Christ and yet will sit up there and vote for things that are outrageous to those of us who do follow Christ. Things like the killing of innocent children in the womb, physician-assisted suicide, stripping parents of their authority to raise their children with a biblical worldview, his design for marriage being between one man and one woman, and the real crazy part of saying to God, you made a mistake when you knit me in my mother's womb as a man or a woman. A lot of our leaders have decided that keeping the seat that they have and the power that they have outweighs their responsibility to serve the Lord. So a couple of years ago, the Family Foundation launched what's called the Church Ambassador Network. This organization, this part of our organization, has one mission, and that is to bring the shepherds of God's church, his pastors, together with the shepherds of God's government to help remind them who they serve. They serve God first. Over the past couple of years, through our General Assembly sessions, we've seen over 700 pastor-legislator connections in a nonpartisan environment, both sides of the aisle, where we just come together. We open the Word of God, we share His Word with them, and we pray together. We get to know their families, we get to know them, and we try to encourage them to remember who called them into this role that they have, and the importance of honoring God in the decision making that they have every day. I believe it's time for the church to retake its position of being the leader in restoring our culture back to a biblical standard of truth and morality. There are hundreds of pastors across Virginia that have joined this effort, and we salute them because they are bold at a time when it's not easy to be so. If you would all just bow your heads and join me as we pray, then you'll get to eat. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity to gather today. We gather today for one purpose, that is to worship you, to praise you, Lord. I thank you for every family that is represented here tonight. I pray for your blessing over them, that you will prosper their lives, Lord, that you will instill in them a boldness to stand for you, even when it's not comfortable. Lord, we ask for your blessing over this evening, over the fellowship that we'll have, the speakers that are going to step to this podium, and over this food that's been prepared for us, Lord, and we pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you, thank you. I will call you to attention. In addition to being the father of 3 teenagers now and a 20-year-old, I told you, oh, that was pretty good, because I was just getting to the fact that my wife is an elementary school principal, and so I know lots of good claps. I see some of you know that trick as well. So I hope you've enjoyed your dinner, and I know that you have. I want to highlight a couple of things. The slideshow on your screens as it was going through with dinner featured an internship as well as an Equip Worldview Academy. And we mentioned that over in the kids' room, there are young people who we will commend that to, but certainly not in this room as well. There are young people in your life who would benefit from and be a blessing to those programs. And so I just want to bring those to your attention. If you have a young person who's trying to figure out what God has for them in their life and how to navigate intellectually and how to form a worldview that allows them to do this life and cultural engagement really well. In addition, I would just like us to express our appreciation to Ariel Gilly for her music during dinner. Truly a gift. Thank you, Ariel, for that. Lovely. And I'd just like to say about the music, one of the hymns that she played during dinner, you may have noted in the background, was "This Is My Father's World." And it's one of my personal favorite hymns, in part because it contains the following lyric, which encourages me all the time in the world we live in, which is, "This is my Father's world, and let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet." Amen. And has it ever occurred to you that nothing has ever occurred to God? That's kind of fun, isn't it? We have many experiences in our life where we learn something and it's unsettling. And we will have those experiences tonight and tomorrow and all week. God has never had that experience because he has never learned anything. And so, though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. That gives us peace, it gives us comfort, it gives us joy. It's why we can be faithful, it's why we have peace that passes understanding, because we know that despite news that tempts us to be unsettled, God is still in charge, and we find great peace and comfort in that. Now, as you finish up your dinner, and I know you are enjoying your desserts, we are going to resume our program, and as you know, the Family Foundation is always hard at work doing the thing that God has assigned us to do. Though He is in charge, He has given us an assignment. So please turn your attention to learn a bit more about this particular assignment to the screens for a video.
The problems in our culture may seem insurmountable, and if we try to tackle them alone, they just might be. Especially when you see how activists leverage every opportunity to expose our children and grandchildren to everything we are opposed to, like the radical LGBTQ+ agenda. Sarah and her husband know what this feels like. As residents of a conservative county, they felt confident their children would be protected from harmful policies by their public school system.
You know, we both had high expectations of what we were going to get out of our Hanover education, and that all changed very quickly.
But then, Sarah found out the school allowed a young man, claiming to be a girl, in her daughter's locker room.
How else are you supposed to keep your child safe? I didn't know how to keep my daughter safe in this situation. And so we were on our knees every single night, and our answers were to remove her from school. That was the only way we could protect her.
How can you solve a problem as complex as this? Who can you turn to? The Family Foundation comes alongside your family to change Virginia for your children and grandchildren.
As we peel back the layers of just this one issue, we can see how, while the problems run deep, the Family Foundation meets each challenge head-on. It starts with Speak Up grassroots teams who hold school boards accountable.
We're actively targeting school districts to ensure privacy and fair competition for all students.
I am a mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and a lot of children in my community call me Mother Randolph. When I see what these kids are up against in our culture, in the battle to stay safe spiritually and physically, I know I have to speak up. That's why I am so thankful for my local Speak Up team. The team gives me a voice that otherwise wouldn't be heard.
But we learned that we have to start even before the school board members get elected. So our sister organization, the Family Foundation Action, trains new candidates who will change the policies that put our kids at risk.
The Family Foundation gave me the insights I needed to craft the right policies and messaging. They've always been there for me.
Even with these new conservative board members, the old liberal agenda was being pushed by the Virginia School Board Association. So, our Founding Freedoms Law Center sued the old association to shine a light on their liberal bent, and we helped create an alternative association that offers training and support to all of those new school board members.
Every week, we're providing legal advice, resources, and model policies to school board members all across the state. By offering these free, confidential services, we are shifting the direction of Virginia's public schools.
As Executive Director of the School Board Member Alliance, I can't stress enough how important the Founding Freedoms Law Center has been to our work. Their expertise has helped us provide legal advice, resources, and model policies to like-minded school board members across Virginia.
Our job still isn't finished. We are working to pass good legislation in the General Assembly, laws that protect the rights of moms and dads. Everything from SAGE's law that stops schools from cutting moms and dads out of the picture, to tax credits so parents have more education choices, to making those troubling family life education classes an opt-in rather than the default for every child.
Every year, we push a strong conservative legislative agenda that focuses on upholding the value and dignity of every life, born and preborn, guarding the innocence of children, protecting the fundamental rights of parents and religious liberty. Through our policy-making arm, we work to make Virginia a safe place for every family to live and flourish.
To make sure lawmakers keep paying attention, our mama bears regularly drop by Richmond to let them know we're all watching. We can't stop with the legislative branch. Through the Family Foundation action, we mobilized thousands of voters to elect a conservative governor, someone who would direct schools to enact policies that respect the rights of Virginia moms and dads. Finally, because true education is growing in the wisdom and stature of the Lord, we gather the leaders of the church together to pray and learn how they can start their own school or a homeschool co-op, or commit to be the salt and light influence in an existing local school.
The Family Foundation is uniquely positioned to help Virginia families. No other group is fighting for families at so many different levels, from so many different angles, all at once.
With the help of the Family Foundation, Hanover County now stands strong against the LGBTQ+ agenda.
The Family Foundation was able to come in, help support me, and give me the tools that I needed to understand what I was fighting, have the confidence I needed to do it.
Virginia families matter to us because we are Virginia families. We are the Family Foundation.
In just a few minutes there, you see the myriad ways in which this organization is a catalyst for things that would never happen but for this team and this organization, and of course your support. And now I am going to bring up the leader of these efforts. Victoria Cobb is the president of the Family Foundation. She's been with the organization for 2 decades now, back when she was in 3rd grade, I think that was. Serving as its president for the past 19 years, Victoria has also become a highly sought-after public speaker and is often quoted in the media around Virginia as well as nationally. And through her leadership and vision, she has turned TFF into a sophisticated advocacy organization with top-flight professionals without abandoning its strong biblical values. When not leading the oldest and largest pro-family organization in Virginia, she devotes her time to her family as a mother of 4 and wife to her husband, Matt. Please join me in welcoming Victoria Cobb.
So it's about 37 days, 5 hours, and something like 4 minutes until something significant happens. You might have heard a little bit about it. They claim like the whole civilization depends on the outcome, you know, that kind of thing. But really, for some of you, you are genuinely looking forward to the potential change in the administration. For others of you, you're just looking for your phone to get unclogged from all the political texts you're getting. But I think the way that my son watched the election returns in 2016 is actually kind of similar to how we might watch them this year as we are in 2024. Far too closely and with our security blanket in hand. No matter how you watch the election returns, no matter who is elected, our work to create a better future for our children and our grandchildren must remain, and we must remain unwavering in our efforts. We live in a crazy world. I know I don't have to tell you that, but you know, earlier this year, a Virginia school board member took their oath of office by he took his hand and placed it on and swore his allegiance to pornography. Not the Bible, not even another sacred text, pornography. Not only was he mocking God, but it was also a blatant slap in the face to all those parents across the country, across Virginia, and in his own county who have been thoughtfully challenging the age appropriateness of certain books in curriculum and in their libraries. In that very same county, the school board hired a self-proclaimed bondage specialist to be the person who determines if complaints from parents about sexual content in books are actually taken seriously. In her professional bio, this person stated, quote, "I work from an affirming and social justice approach with the LGBTQIA community and people of color, and I am kink and non-monogamy informed and affirming," and it goes on from there, but I will leave it at that. You know, as I once heard my friend John Stonestreet say, things that were unthinkable yesterday become unquestionable today. The direct clash between the LGBTQ agenda and our faith is very clear. It cannot be ignored any longer. This year, one county decided that out of all the days of the year, that Easter would be the Transgender Visibility Day, Easter Sunday. Do you now know that there are 259 days on our calendar that are different days that are to affirm the LGBTQ lifestyles? These include, of course, June Pride Month, October LGBT History Month, and the week before Thanksgiving that is Transgender Awareness Week, because of course that explains the Easter extra day, because awareness and visibility are so dramatically different that we have to have more holidays to celebrate those things. Our world is just upside down, and its understanding of family is upside down. On the one hand, liberals in our state actually acknowledge that families are important, and they did that on the first hand by having a Family First tour across Virginia. But on the other hand, that tour followed a session where they had proven that they have absolutely no idea what a family actually is. So during that session, the leftists in our General Assembly made it very clear that they don't understand what a mother is. They put forward legislation that instead of referencing pregnant women, they inserted the term birthing persons. When confronted in committee with an amendment by Senator Peake, where he simply suggested that we call that class of people mothers, they refused. Later on in the legislative process, they let this otherwise good bill on maternal health care die because they wouldn't accept Governor Youngkin's clarification that, in fact, only women give birth. But how can we expect them to understand what motherhood is if they don't acknowledge the value of babies? With the full support of our legislative team, led by Dr. Todd Gackey, Delegate Mark Earley, who's with us here tonight, introduced a bill that simply ensured that in Virginia's family life education classes, those students learn human embryology by watching an ultrasound video. Apparently these days, showing an ultrasound, a medical diagnostic test, is so threatening it can't be shown to students. Their denial of women, motherhood, and babies was sort of summed up in the words of our vice president recently, who said in her fairly typically condescending tone, "A majority of women who get abortions are mothers." No, Kamala, all women who get abortions are mothers. They are all mothers. But to be fair to those who went on this Family First tour across our Commonwealth, it's hard to understand motherhood and babies if you have no idea what a woman is, right? This is a challenge, which they made perfectly clear, and they do so every single time they go to block our Save Girls sports bill. We think this proposal is fairly straightforward. Only girls play girls' sports. This seems pretty commonplace. We even brought in Riley Gaines one time to try to help clarify these things for them, but even she could not help them get past their obstinance. This altered state of reality that we seem to be living in, it could lead one to despair or discouragement, just desperation. And it would be understandable if sometimes you feel that way, and you wouldn't be alone. However, the problem with those feelings, those emotions that you get, is that they are exactly what the opposition wants. Because those emotions, they lead us to inaction, to uselessness. Sadly, those feelings stop good people from doing the right things all the time, from voting, from showing up at a school board meeting, from letting your voice be heard with your legislator, or from having the hard conversation with your friends and your family. When you think that our world has simply just gone too far, that really you can't even make a difference, you're actually doubting God. The fact is, the real reality is that He can do anything, and He can do it through us. Of course, God can work without you, and Mordecai knew that very well when he was talking to Esther. If you remember the scene where he's asking Esther to help free their people. But he says this to her. He says, quote, "For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish." This year, this word from Mordecai seems even more prevalent, should ring more especially true to us in this national election moment where truly the fate of Israel may be deeply impacted by the policies set by the next administration, an administration that we choose if we're engaged, because it's the engaged that will choose the fate of Israel in many ways, those that are involved in voting and knocking and conversations. The point of Mordecai's words, though, is that God can accomplish his will for our nation, for our commonwealth, for your family, with or without you. But boy, he'd sure like to do it through you, and Scripture says that over and over again. At the Family Foundation, we've chosen to put ourselves in a position to be used by God to do his will. We volunteer to take the fiery darts of the aggressive left, to work alongside God in what he is doing. We don't think that Jesus taught the disciples when he taught them to pray, when he said, "Thy will be done, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." We don't think he taught them that and then expected them to step aside and have God work around them. The Family Foundation engages because pushing back the darkness saves lives and prevents harm. I've often been asked how I can remain in the battle to save the unborn because it feels like the tide has turned against us. Admittedly, we're not having a fun moment in the pro-life movement right now. We're seeing our state targeted as a destination for abortion. And even those abortions that happen in later term in pregnancy, causing our annual volume of abortion in Virginia to grow 103% in 6 years, and having 5 new abortion clinics pop up. And I'm not even talking about the one that the city of Richmond right now is trying to give to Planned Parenthood for $10. Of course, our law center is hard at work on that. We aren't going to let Planned Parenthood ruin our city without a fight. In fact, in the weeks and months to come, you'll be hearing a lot from us about the effort by the abortion industry to enshrine into our state constitution a permanent restriction from our legislature ever being allowed to limit abortion in any way at any time, no matter how late in the pregnancy it is, no matter how coerced the woman is, and no matter how unsafe the facility might be. But I remain in this battle through the ups and downs because for me, it has never been about whether the secular, godless public agrees with me. It's always been about cherishing the human potentiality of an unborn child based on God's design ingrained in every fiber of DNA from the earliest moments of conception. I've always wanted to be a part of delivering hope. God doesn't abandon people in their hard circumstances, those hard moments, even when a child is born out of those hard circumstances. And his redemption often comes through that child born out of hard circumstances, because that child still bears his image. I want to be vocal on the side that announces the network of support for women who find themselves in hard circumstances. And I want to be louder than the lies of despair that are brought to these women by the abortion industry. And you're welcome to join me in that when we have our next Walk for Life, our March for Life next year, April 9th, 2025. You can be part of that voice. The battle is worth engaging because despite having every pro-life law we had ever passed for decades stripped away by a liberal legislature, if you think about it though, during the years from 2014 when we had all the protections in place to the years of 2020 where they stripped them all away, at least 21,765 lives were saved as the abortion rate fell more and more every year under those protections. Every one of those lives, those are real lives. Those are worth the battle. Those are children that are now in preschool and elementary school. Those children are our future. When the Founding Freedoms Law Center kept Hope for Life's mobile unit, it's an ultrasound unit that's mobile on the streets outside of the Planned Parenthood in Virginia Beach, when they kept that open during COVID by pushing back against Virginia Beach City Police who wanted to shut it down, you know what? The twins that were born as a result of the ultrasound that mom got that day, those twins are worth it. When our attorney at the Founding Freedoms Law Center rescued a teen out of the back door of an abortion facility and got her real help, Makari, Terrell McDowell's son, he's worth it. He's worth the battle. You see, when we feel discouraged, when we feel that our work is somehow in this nebulous space of public policy, it's not. It's in the real lives changed. And it's not just in the area of protecting human life that we seek to hold back the darkness. It's also what we do with our Speak Up teams. When our Speak Up teams, under the direction of Candy Cushman, are rallying at school boards and school board meetings to get the wise policies that we need around the issue of transgender students, it's not an exercise in futility. Winning this battle in Newport News, like our Speak Up team that did this year, means that Newport News is trying to prevent what Loudoun County lived firsthand. They're not letting boys enter private spaces where they do not belong. A policy that is rife with danger for our girls and that Loudoun knows results in sexual assault. Engagement doesn't just push back the darkness, it can turn the tide. And sometimes it can even win. Of course, while many choose to abandon the field out of discouragement or a feeling of despair, too many are not engaged because the issue of abortion or the issue of transgenderism just hasn't quite hit home yet, doesn't affect them yet. Yet, even when the current flashpoint doesn't directly affect you, by the time it does, it may be too late. We're all familiar with the oft-repeated quote by Martin Niemöller, the German pastor who, after the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II, he spoke of it as sort of a realization of regret, that the German church had been complicit with the Nazis in their actions by not speaking out. He condemns his own silence, his own inaction, and his own indifference. In it, he says, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me." This might be an extreme comparison, but between the unholy alliance of secular elites, Hollywood, the media, and those that follow them with blind allegiance, I'm tempted to be concerned that anything could happen. The list of who they're coming after today is different, but it's growing every day. Today, it looks something like this. First, they came for the cake baker, but I was not a cake baker. Then they came for the photographer, but I was not a photographer. Then they came for the teacher, but I was not a teacher. Then they came for the surfer, and we'll hear more from her later on today, but I was not a surfer. And then they came for the realtor. Oh, maybe you haven't heard that one. Right now, our Founding Freedoms Law Center attorneys, Josh Hetzler and Michael Sylvester, have teamed up with local Stanton attorneys who are also here to represent a bivocational minister and realtor whose name is Wilson Fauber, he's also here in our audience, in an ethics charge issued by the National Association of Realtors. What was his supposed crime? He dared to post on his personal Facebook page the Bible's definition of marriage as being between one man and one woman, which when he posted it, by the way, in 2015, it happened to actually be the law of the land. But fast forward to more recent times when he dared to also post about the injuries that come to women when men enter their sports. As it turns out, His statement is perceived to run afoul of the Realtor Association's recently adopted provision about hate crimes, hate speech, this idea that somehow his words are hateful. Apparently, quoting the truth of the Bible is now enough to trigger a formal ethics complaint that could ruin a real estate agent's career. No profession is safe from getting in the crosshairs of the left. And now they're coming for the counselors. Just a couple days ago, our Founding Freedoms Law Center announced that it is representing John and Janet Raymond, also here tonight, both professional licensed counselors who regularly counseled minors, often in issues of gender and sexuality, until in 2020, when Virginia passed the ban on so-called conversion therapy, which actually is a ban on just simply talking to people and simply helping them align their thinking with the biology that God has given them. Today, to help a child in this way, the Raymonds would be violating the law and would lose their livelihood as the state would revoke their license. We look forward to restoring free speech and religious freedom for all Virginians through this case. Who are they coming for next? You? Your spouse? Your pastor? Well, at the Family Foundation, we engage because we believe this mounting list has to stop, and it has to stop now. I've told you why the Family Foundation engages, but I'm not pretending it's easy. This year, our organization was added to the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate group list. In one sense, we'd like to say, it's an accomplishment of sorts. You must know the list. In one sense, we want to say, who cares that we've been added to this hate list of this phony leftist group that the media somehow props up and makes them look legitimate? But on the other hand, it does matter because a group like us, Family Research Council, was on this list, and as a result of being on this list, a man walked into their office pretending to deliver Chick-fil-A and pulled out a gun ready to do harm. On a less violent note, the hate list is regularly consulted by certain donor-advised funds and matching programs to block funds from supporters to groups like ours. Fundamentally, it's an insidious effort to smear Christians and pro-family nonprofits. I've shared with you the temptation to not engage, and I've shared with you why the Family Foundation chooses to engage. And now I'm going to close by telling you why I engage. Some of you know I was called to this work early, at a young age, at the age of 11, truly, I believe, by God. You may have heard that I was inspired by my grandmother, who really understood that this nation, with all of its flaws and warts, was a blessing, and it was a gift given by God to be living in this country, and she knew that Scripture commanded us to steward that well. But when it gets right down to it, I engage because I have 4 children, and their future depends on it. So yes, we can join in fear and anxiety and even in despair. We can allow those emotions to paralyze us. We can be bludgeoned into inaction. We can believe the commentators and the pundits when they say our vote doesn't matter, our voice doesn't count, that we'll lose no matter what we do, and that there is no hope. Or we can choose a different path. We can choose the path that so many before us chose, from Queen Esther to the abolitionists. We can choose to stand for truth, be faithful, and trust God with the outcome. At the Family Foundation, we really don't have a choice. We made that decision long ago, that no matter the political tide, no matter the culture, no matter the opposition, that we will fight. Tonight, will you put aside your fears about our future to commit to engage? Commit that no matter the circumstances, your faith will be unwavering. Commit to vote, even when the candidates are imperfect. Commit to join your local Speak Up team to affect your own community. Pastors, commit to joining the Church Ambassador Network and come pray with your legislators. Commit to joining us in all we do and can do to make sure that in the future, our children and our grandchildren can look back at this moment and look back at what we did and be proud of us. That they won't look back and ask, why did my mom and dad not stand up when they had a chance? Why did they remain silent? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. On behalf of your 4 children and my 4 children, and I know that we all have the people that come to mind for us when we think about the future. And what we realize is that we are, in fact, in a war. That is undeniable. It is a spiritual war, ultimately, that goes back to Genesis chapter 3, and that question, did God really say? That's the root of this conflict, but it has material, personal consequences. And because we are in a war, as ambassadors for Christ, which is what Paul calls us in 1 Corinthians, we get to be here when they ask that question, did God really say? And we say yes. And we say it courageously, and we say it fearlessly, and we say it boldly. Because it's not safe, but he's good, and he doesn't call us to a life of safety. He calls us to a life of adventure and obedience in him. But because we are in a war, you need guns. Metaphorically, of course. And if this helps you, as we go to this moment of the program, in the middle of the table, there's a bag. And within that bag are envelopes and pens. And if a leader at each of the tables would grab that bag and grab those pens and grab those envelopes and begin to circulate around the table, that would be helpful. Because at this moment, if it's helpful to you, think of Victoria as Vladimir Zelensky. I don't need a ride, I need ammo. And the big guns require 6 or 7 zeros. But if that doesn't help you, think of it this way. We as Americans are political trust fund babies. We have inherited something wonderful, for which I know everyone in this room is grateful. But what we must do from time to time is remember that as political trust fund babies, we don't get just to blow it like the prodigal son. It is our job to be stewards of what we are given. And if all we do is enjoy the environment that we were given, one day it will cease to exist. And so what we have to do is maintenance. And it may not be our favorite thing to do, to mow the lawn or change the brakes or fix the roof, but we have to do it to be good stewards of the things that we are given. And that's true for our vehicles and our homes, and it's true for our nation. And this is a time of year where we do some maintenance on the ballot and in other ways by providing the resources necessary to engage this war. In the envelope that you now have, please open that up and take your pen, and there are a couple different things that you can do. And we're going to take some time to do it. First, at the very bottom, just please fill out your name and your contact information, whatever you do tonight. We want to make sure that you're part of the family. There are so many ways to be engaged in this effort. We know, again, as Paul reminds us in 1 Corinthians, that we are one body and many members. We don't need to do more than God has called us to do, but we certainly can't do less than what God has called us to do as well. And part of our job is finding out what that is. And while we're going to provide financial support, that's not the only thing that the Family Foundation needs from us. So the contact information on this form allows you to be in touch with this effort because we are in a war. And then at the top of the card, what you'll see there is 2 different options. There's a chance to make a one-time gift, which we will encourage you to do, remembering that the big guns cost 6 and 7 zeros. But then in addition to that, regular support, as somebody who has run a nonprofit organization that, unlike Opponents like Planned Parenthood receive no government dollars. And the reliability of government dollars provides peace when you run the organization, but when you don't have that certainty, you depend on God and your friends. And so, if you are able, like you make a monthly auto insurance payment or a home insurance payment, because you know that time is coming when you are going to need it, the Family Foundation is your insurance policy against all of the bad things that could happen. And so if you are willing to make that regular monthly contribution to truth, to those who are willing to stand in the gap and do the things that we cannot do on our own, that would be greatly appreciated. So I'm going to give us about 90 seconds to finish filling this out. And then when you are done, if the leader who distributed them would collect them and again put them in the bag in the center of the table, that will allow them to be easily collected at the end of the evening, because it would be tragic if it got swept up into the garbage. So we'll take 90 seconds to let that happen. And truly, thank you so much for your support. And now, we are going to move into the next part of our program and introduce our keynote speaker this evening. Recently inducted into the Surfers Hall of Fame and deemed by Sports Pro Media as one of the world's most marketable athletes, Bethany Hamilton is a wife, mother, and a professional surfer from Hawaii, whose best-selling autobiography was featured in the major motion picture Soul Surfer. She's known for surviving a traumatic shark incident at 13, losing her left arm, and for overcoming that huge life change to ultimately become one of the best women, surfers in the world, who has accomplished far more than she ever dreamed with one arm. Now, Bethany is an epic role model and speaks passionately about the need to protect life, families, and girls' sports. Bethany will be interviewed by Candy Cushman as Family Foundation's Vice President of Grassroots and Communications. Candy joined the team after nearly 19 years of service at Focus on the Family, where she oversaw national initiatives to strengthen parental rights and students' religious freedoms. As part of that work, she founded the annual Bring Your Bible to School Day, which grew to 650,000 participants. Candy was also an editor for Focus Policy Magazine and an investigative reporter for World Magazine. In her current role, Candy empowers the voices of concerned Virginia citizens through the Speak Up Virginia movement. She also hosts and directs production of our Speak Up Virginia podcast. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Candy Cushman and Bethany Hamilton.
21 years after her life was forever changed, the famous surfer is still defying the odds.
Growing up on a small island in Hawaii, Bethany Hamilton always had a natural love for the ocean. That was until one day, aged 13, her whole world changed.
I lost my arm to a shark. A shark just came and bit it off, and I don't know, I lost about 60% of my blood, and it was just a miracle that I survived and made it to the hospital.
An encounter with a 14-foot tiger shark resulted in the loss of her arm, left others questioning Bethany's future. But in her own eyes, it was just an obstacle she was going to overcome.
You think you're going to surf again?
I think. I know.
Most believed her hopes and dreams for a superstar surfing career were gone, but Bethany was back on her board 4 weeks later.
Bethany went on to become one of the world's leading professional surfers, as well as a successful author. Her story inspiring the hit movie Soul Surfer. Now, 20 years on, Bethany has found love, had 4 beautiful children, and is still motivating others that anything is possible.
Well, welcome, Bethany. It is so wonderful to have you here. Such an honor. Thank you for spending time with us tonight.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, I just got to start out by saying that clip that we all just saw, my favorite part of it is when that television reporter is interviewing you and he asks you, you're a young teen, it's right after the shark attack, and he asks you, do you think you'll surf again? And you just looked him dead in the eye and said, I know. I mean, you could just see the fire in your spirit coming out of your eyes. That was an awesome moment.
Yes, I really think God designed me the way I am to face some of the trials that I faced in my life, but I love that moment when little Bethany is like, I think I know. And I'm so glad that I was willing to try and put myself out there and surf again. And fast forward now, I'm passing on my love for surfing to my children, so it's awesome.
Well, I also noticed that you said in that clip that you lost over 60% of your blood. And I mean, that really is just a miracle that you survived. But praise God, you are here with us. You are a living testimony that God can take any circumstance, even our worst, and just, use it for our good and His glory. But we know at the same time, that recovery doesn't happen overnight. And, that's a lot for a 13-year-old girl just to wake up and, you've lost an arm. So will you speak to us about what some of your lowest points were in walking through that and how Jesus, how you experienced Jesus in a real way through that suffering?
Yeah, so after I lost my arm, I remember waking up in the hospital thinking, wow, my arm is gone, and just feeling like my life was flipped upside down. But I had an overwhelming sense of peace that God was in control, and like one of those true moments of a peace that surpasses all understanding. Like God calls us to look to Him to be our peace. And even that little 13-year-old Bethany had a peace that God was in control. And I was so grateful to be alive. I knew I could have died, and I had lost a lot of blood, and it was a long journey getting from where I lost my arm to the hospital. And yeah, it was just incredible and truly a miracle. And so I think having just childlike faith and also being grateful, that really helped me to move forward, even though I felt like my future felt very uncertain and I didn't know what I would do with my life, and just life was flipped upside down. And so it was just beautiful to see how God carried me through that season, and I'm grateful that my mom encouraged me in my faith. She would read the Bible to me and pray with me. My dad took me to church, and I'm just grateful for how my parents spoke into my life. And I think that the way they spoke into my life prepared me for that chaotic moment, that I would be able to trust in God. And still to this day, I'm still trusting in the Lord in all the ups and downs that life may throw my way. And so I would encourage you parents out there to not underestimate the voice that you have in your children's lives. A lot of the issues we're facing comes back to the family, to the father, speaking into their children's lives, and ultimately the enemy, bringing enmity, or there's that verse in the Bible that talks about there being enmity between husband and wife and father and son. And so being aware of how Satan works against the family and wants to pull the family apart. And so I just look at my life and I see how the way my parents spoke into my life really changed the trajectory of that season. And it could have gone in so many different directions, and instead it was positive and beautiful, and something awful turned into something incredible and wonderful. And I don't have pity on my life, but I have joy and hope and excitement for my future. And even 13-year-old Bethany had the same feeling, so I'm grateful.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible that you were out in that water again just 3 weeks after the shark attack happened. That is just amazing, so unusual, I think. And I'd really like to hear your perspective on what gave you that kind of fortitude? Because I don't know that a lot of people would be out there that quick. And I mean, do you think that's a God-given spiritual perseverance, or that you're naturally competitive, or what? How do you explain that?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't simply just being competitive, but to give you an understanding, I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I grew up on the beach. The ocean was my playground, and I was a super duper talented 13-year-old girl. The summer before, I had finished second in the national championships, 18 and under at 12 years old, or was it 13 years old? And so I was thriving in my sport, but it was more than just a sport. It was my passion, a lifestyle. My whole family surfed, I don't know, there's something about surfing. It just can't be compared to other sports. Like, it was just more than just a sport, And so when I lost my arm, I didn't wake up in the hospital thinking, yeah, I'm gonna get back out there and surf again. I'm like, what else could I do with my life? Like, my mom's trying to problem solve, like, we'll move to the mountains and you can become a snowboarder. Or how about you take on photography? She's just trying to comfort me and come up with a new plan. And then I'm laying in the hospital, and a friend comes and visits me. His name is Mike Coots, and he actually learned how to surf with one leg after he'd lost his leg to a shark. Fast forward now, he photographs like great white sharks for fun, and that's like his passion in life. And him and I get in the ocean, quite frequently, because we live just down the road from each other. But he's like, hey, I think you can surf with one arm. And so I get this light bulb of inspiration from Mike, and I am dead set on getting out there and trying. And at this point, my fear is not of sharks, but that I won't be able to do it with one arm. So I'm just waiting till the doctor says I can get in the ocean, and I'm healed up enough. And thankfully, my surgeries, some people have an extensive amount of recovery time depending on the limb loss and however everything plays out, but mine was just very clean cut. So I healed up really fast, and I ended up going out a day before the doctor said I was allowed to. And I'm paddling out there, my whole family's there, all my friends. I'm just so stoked. And I stumble. I'm trying to catch waves, trying to figure this out, and I can't figure it out. And my dad's like, here, let me do it. And I'm like, no, Dad, stay away. Like, you can't help me in this moment. So to help you understand how determined I was, I wouldn't let my dad help me. So dads, don't take it personally when your daughter says no. But I love just the fact that he was there, cheering me on. But he helped me. He said, hey, you're gonna have to do things differently now that you have one arm. So try shift your hand to the middle of the board, whereas when you pop up, normally you have both hands on the side. And I was losing my balance popping up. So he said, hey, shift your hand to the middle of the board. And sure enough, next wave, I pop up and ride it all the way to the beach. And I just have tears of joy and overwhelmed sense of like relief that I could do it. And then from there, being young, it definitely helped being young. And, I knew how to surf. I just had to adapt and do it a different way. And so from there, it was just no turning back. And before you knew it, I'm like, Dad, can I go do the next contest? And I think that was more so just wanting to get back to normal life. I was very competitive, so I started competing and made a final in my first event and went on to make a final in the nationals that following summer. And 2 years later, I won a national title, all with one arm. So that was pretty cool. And then that kind of, yes. And so that kind of eventually projected me into a professional career and just competing and pushing female surfing and just doing my Bethany unique Bethany thing.
It does make me think of the famous runner Eric Liddell, who talked about, when I run, I feel God's pleasure. And God has clearly created you this, and you feel his joy in that. So will you just share with us real quick that moment when you caught the first wave after the attack?
Yeah, so I kind of already talked about that, but I forgot something I did want to share. James 1:2-3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Romans 15:5. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind towards each other that Christ Jesus had. And while for me, enduring and surfing came naturally, there's other areas of life that it didn't come natural. And yeah, I have a persevering kind of like go get it sort of a personality, but there's challenges in life that have come since that have been incredibly hard. And so, you know, when the going gets really tough, I'm grateful for my faith. I'm grateful that I have God's word to go to, and that I have the God of all power, all strength, all overcoming, and all knowing on my side, and he can help me to endure. So if anyone here tonight is going through a season of trial and challenge, just look to God. He is the author and finisher of our faith. He is the one that is here to help us through our trials and our hardships. And so, you know, I think of I look at the young Bethany, and she endured so well, and she pushed through those pain points, and I feel like that young version of me helps me today. And in those challenges that don't feel so easy to persevere, and when I just really know that I need help, and that God is the greatest help that we can have. And so it's such a beautiful room to be in, with such a great mission to empower the family, cheer on our young people, you know, set up the future for, you know, my daughter and my sons. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming alongside of the Family Foundation to do such beautiful work.
Yeah. Well, it's just so clear that you have this deep faith, obviously, that infuses everything you do, just from the little things day in and day out. Also, including the bigger things, like this huge movie about your life, Soul Surfer, that reaches, you know, millions and millions of people. And I really just loved how you were able to have a say into that movie. I didn't realize you were able to really have that much say, but I read what the director said, that, you know, Bethany was about getting two things right: Jesus and surfing. The surfing had to be legit, right? Tell us how you spoke into that.
Yeah, so we knew making this film was going to be really rough, because we threw out the first 3 scripts they gave us. And after sitting on the couch with these script writers thinking, like, how could you not get it wrong? Like, we just spent so much time, you know, giving all the details of this very dramatic story, and then they would bust out a script that had, like, just so many things off and wrong, and extra added drama when we had so much drama as it was. And yeah, so, but it was really cool to see God's hand in that time, and just how he used the different members of my family. It was a family affair. We were all involved in making this movie, and we all put our foot down at times, and, you know, we just worked hard to keep our story as authentic and true to just the heart of our story. And then too, a lot of Hollywood often really messes up surfing too. So we wanted the surfing to be awesome and authentic. And so yeah, it was a fun journey though. You know, I got to do some of my own stunt surfing. We worked on the script as a family. One of my brothers was a camera assistant. My brother and other brother and sister-in-law were executive producers. And in the end, we were really happy with how the film turned out and felt honored to share it. And a funny little side story is, my family and I were in Indonesia 2 weeks ago on a vacation, surf trip, and we had to take a fast ferry to get to a remote island that we were staying on. And the only people on this boat are a few Indonesians and then a bunch of surfers. So we get on the boat though, and we're in the middle of nowhere. And I'm kind of concerned because they have some weird movies playing on the boat. And so I'm going up to I'm the assertive mom going up to like say, hey, can we change the movie? Because like I have little children here. And I end up in the captain's chair room, and they're like pointing at me, and then they're pointing down at something in a different language. And long story short, they had Soul Surfer as one of the options. I'm like, no, we are not playing Soul Surfer. But they're all stoked and like eyebrows lifted, and they're just like, is that you? Like they're putting it all together, and I'm like, yeah, that's me, but let's play that other movie. So it's really but I just think it's so cool. Like my story's been shared in the like depths of South America and Indonesia and Thailand and all over the world. And yeah, it's just amazing to see how God can take my story and turn it into something so beautiful. And I believe he can do the same with all of our stories. And maybe it's not in a Hollywood sense, but maybe it's in the young people's lives around you and sharing your experience, sharing your knowledge, empowering our young people by sharing your life. And I'm just honored that God has used my story in the way that he has. And yeah, making Soul Surfer was pretty awesome. And then fast forward, we made my documentary as well, Bethany, from childhood to motherhood, and just the more authentic version of me. And that was a really fun project because I basically got to surf my tail off and push female surfing and just push myself and accomplish some of my goals. So.
That was that Unstoppable one?
Yeah, Unstoppable, yeah. Bethany Hamilton. So I think it's on YouTube maybe, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, fast forward over 20 years now, and here you are now, and it's just awesome to see how God is using you mightily to speak through your faith into the culture in a different way. And you have spoken into this controversy with this whole thing with males competing in female sports. And I guess this came to your attention because the World Surf League started going down this track. Tell us how that got on your radar.
So I was getting whispers of it, and I mentioned it to a couple of my friends. I said, like, hey, I think they're gonna start allowing males in the female division. My friends were like, no, that's not gonna happen. And I was on Oahu prepping to compete at Pipeline, and the morning of the first day of the event, we get an email in the inbox saying, here's the new rules. And it was allowing males to compete in the female division. And I ended up texting a few of my friends and said, did you check your emails today? Because it's not looking pretty. And at this point, I hadn't really talked out via social media or publicly against males and female sports, though I was very against it. And it basically, like, I woke up to that email box and I was like, now's my time to shine. And so I kind of like geared up to prepare a statement and just put it out publicly saying like, I don't support this, but I more put it in a way of like asking questions. Like, does this make sense? Like, is it fair to simply, calculate some testosterone levels that can be artificially produced, and tried to do it in the most gracious way I could. And yeah, it was just crazy. I mean, I personally look at that time and think the overwhelming support was pretty amazing. Like, I would say there was more support than negativity, though the negativity can be very loud and obnoxious and aggressive. But people were coming out of the woodworks, like, thanking me for speaking up. And yeah, I just, I wanted to stand up for the next generation of female surfers and cheer them on to have fair game. And so, Yeah, currently everything is remaining the same. Nothing has changed. And my hunch is that the World Surf League is just following the Olympic bylaws or standards. And yeah, it was it wasn't fun, but even a few of you are like, thank you for sacrificing. But it really doesn't feel like a sacrifice to me. While I did have a conversation going on with Ford at the time, in my mind now, I'm like, well, I don't really want to promote someone like Ford if they're not supporting females to compete against females, they're pushing out other agendas. And so it kind of became this time to draw the line in the sand of like not promoting companies that support this. A lot of these companies have leaders who haven't even really thought much about this subject. I think of some of the conversations I've had. They're literally sent to a class, told what to think and do, and then they go and do it. These aren't people that care about the younger generation. They're just being told what to do. And I'm talking, is this making sense? I'm like, yeah. Anyway, I had a conversation with a CEO, and she told me that's what she did. She went to a class, got told what to say and do, and now she's doing that. And she's not even having any sort of pushback. And I'm like, well, is that what's best for females in sport? Anyway.
Yeah, that makes total sense. We've been seeing this kind of politically correctness seeping into the corporations, and now it's getting into the sports world. But I'd love for you to talk to us about the fairness issue, because you have a really up-close view of this. I mean, people need to understand that you've competed in the World Surf League for 15 years, top-ranked surfer, and at one point you beat out a 6-year world champion. So I think you know what this could do to sports if this trend continues. And also, with having your first little girl, I'd like to hear how that's impacting your thinking on this.
Yeah, I was pregnant when I was first speaking out, specifically in the surfing industry, and I didn't know if I was having a boy or girl, but I was like, man, if I'm having a daughter, then I'm going all out. And so then, little did I know, little Leia is coming along, and so she seems pretty athletic at her age. I'm like, whoa, she's got some athletic genes going here, so we'll see where she goes with those. But yeah, I mean, I kind of forget your question.
I mean, it's more, well, let's put it this way. It's more than just a hormone because they were saying,
totally.
Testosterone measurement or whatever.
Yeah.
If you could speak to why it matters, more than just measuring someone's hormones when men invade women's sports.
I think everyone here can agree. You just look at the other sports and what's starting to happen and how destructive it is towards female sports. It's obvious. And with surfing, the strength difference, the bone structure, it's very apparent. And while there's some super incredibly talented 16, 17, 18-year-olds right now that are arguably pushing even against males, there's just such a big difference in the strength and the structure. And even I think of big wave surfing, for example, the paddling strength is vastly different. And being in a fairly male-dominated sport, when I'm out there surfing, it's obvious. And so I don't really feel like I need to argue for it because it is so obvious that it's so incredibly unfair and should not be that way, I think one thing I've been pondering lately that felt pretty discouraging is when I did speak out, there really wasn't many other surfers speaking out alongside of me. And I even think about the perspective of everyone expects all these other girls to speak out, but I'm like, where's the guys? Men are supposed to be the protectors of men are supposed to be the protectors of the woman, and we didn't even have any males speaking out on our behalf, maybe a couple chirps here and there, but the World Surf League had all the athletes sign no disparaging agreement at the beginning of the year. So a lot of the athletes were going to have to basically give up their career. They would get fined. They'd be removed from the World Surf League. And so a lot of the athletes went silent, though they might have DM'd me or texted me saying thank you. But there was an incredible amount of athletes and world-class elite level surfers that didn't say a thing. None of the former world champs who have nothing to lose except for maybe like their, emotions being pulled at. None of them are speaking out. It's crazy to me. And I did a Brave Books event with Riley, and hearing her talk, she said, it felt so lonely. And I felt that deeply when I heard her say that. I was like, yeah, that's about right. It was pretty lonely. And so I think empowering our young people to be brave is also really important, and to stand for truth. That's why I'm really proud to be partnered with Brave Books over the last couple years, and they're doing their own beautiful work by writing books to help our children live a life of values and to seek the truth and to speak the truth. And I absolutely love reading these books to my boys. There's two books in particular, Son of Truth, and it's all about this one boy, Tiger, being challenged to tell the truth, and he has this moment where he's wavering, but then he goes and tells the truth, and it's just so much better. And then there's this other one where the little brother saves his little sister from the poisonous flower that she stepped on, and he has to climb a mountain and go and get the remedy for her, and it's just so beautiful. But
Well, I think speaking of that, the Brave Books, I do want to bring up this one event that you did, because you're such an optimist, and you make it sound wonderful, but there has been a cost to you. And I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to talk about something that happened at a Brave Book event. But first, let me back up a little bit and just mention, for those of you that may not know, the sponsor Rip Curl was with Bethany from the very beginning when she was a young girl. And, when they stayed with you through the shark attack. And that was a really great relationship. But despite all of that, when Bethany started speaking out about protecting girls' sports, they dropped her. And you mentioned Ford as well, and and then there's just been, as you might say, I've heard you say, gnarly reaction on social media, just really some nasty stuff, and that's where I want to bring in this this Brave Books thing. So you were at this Innocent Family Library event. It's one of the Kirk Cameron Brave Book. You're reading your children's book, Surfing Past Fear. You didn't even mention yours.
Past Fear book. So I wrote a book with them, and my version is Surfing Past Fear, so encouraging our children to overcome their fears. And Riley and I did a Brave Books library reading, and anyway.
Yeah, so there was a protester there. There were protesters there that showed up, but one was especially outrageous, and I think we're going to show a photo of that. But this protester had a trans flag wrapped around them and carrying a stuffed shark. What in the world is going through your mind when these protesters do this kind of crazy thing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I actually don't take offense at all, and if anything, I have compassion on that individual, because I'm like, for them to be like that, they're coming from a dark place, and to go as far as repainting awful pictures, I just kind of have a heart for them and a feeling of they need love in their life, and they are coming from a different version, a different place of maybe anger or hurt, or maybe they're a bit lost. And so I don't feel angry at them. Like for a while I had a shark club, so there was like a club of people who were like fans of the shark. So on like TikTok, and they would just kind of comment like, we're on Team Shark, like, wish you died, you know, hope another shark comes your way,
Wow.
sort of a thing. And to me, it's less, you know, it doesn't really hurt me. I'm more of just like, whoa, like I wouldn't wish that on anyone, no matter how awful they were. And so recognizing that this is like the state of much of society, like they're full of so much darkness that they go to that extreme. And you know that they're not in a healthy place when they're doing things like that. And they, you know, like, I don't know, like go and do something better with your life. And so,
well, if there was one silver lining in all these crazy, you know, social media attacks, I'm going to go back to Rip Curl for a minute. It's what happened with that. Because shortly after they dropped you, then they did this promotion on social media for women's sports. This is for women's sports promotion. They put a...
women's bikinis.
Yeah.
You should say women's bikinis.
I'll let Bethany say that. Women's bikini. Is that what they were promoting? I don't remember exactly. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that is weird. So they're promoting women's bikinis. And they feature a biological male, you know, who identifies as a woman. And this person had competed in, you know, male competitions, and this is who Rip Curl's promoting, and that was just a bridge too far for many women apparently, because there was a huge outcry. There was a boycott. This was literally like the Bud Light moment of the surf world. So it was great to see that outcry. I'm glad people are waking up, but it was just, felt like more of a flash in the pan moment. Yeah, we got a picture up there of what was going on. But it felt like the outcry is more of a flash in the pan kind of thing, and we really need persistence in speaking out over the long haul on this. And so, Bethany, I kind of wanted to come full circle here with the theme we have tonight, unwavering faith, because that is inspired by your life. Will you speak to us why people in this room and the young people listening should have and can have unwavering courage, faith and courage, and speaking truth to this culture, even when it hurts, even when there is a cost?
Yeah. I just think that when we have our values aligned with God, like only good will truly come in the long run. And so looking at the climate of the world and the way the way the culture is going, you know, a lot of it's rooted in Marxism. I've been meaning to dive in and research that a bit more, but just knowing that there are works of darkness and evil out there, but at the end of the day, the Lord wins, and so just doing what He says to do and proclaiming truth on every level and fighting for what is right, starting in your own home with your spouse and your children, and then in your workplace, and then culturally in the government, and in any way that we can or feel called and led to, wherever your place is to be at work. We all have vocations in life, and to love and serve our neighbor the best we can. And to me, telling a young girl to not amputate perfectly good body parts is to love her and to call her back to truth. And so, it's just pretty crazy that, this is even a conversation, but that God is there and He is with us and He will never leave us nor forsake us. And sometimes we have to do scary or junk things, and sometimes there's weirdos that do weird things back towards you, but it's going to be okay at the end of the day. And
I've gotten pretty good at like just not looking. Sometimes my husband will look, but I've just gotten good at not looking when, you know, that sort of thing goes, because I want my mental energy to go towards my children and bringing good to the world and being an encouragement and light. And so it's an honor to do what I do, and I definitely don't regret at all, you know, speaking out, and plan to continue that. My husband and I are working towards launching our podcast, so we'll, you know, with social media, I feel like it's just such a little snippet, and I think with the podcast it'll be really fun because you can have more of a conversation that, you know, can cover subjects with more of a healthy approach versus social media. It's so short and, you know, quick to judge, quick to, you know, react, quick to get emotionally bent over things. And so I'm excited to just speak out more through our podcast and the different work that we look forward to doing, and teamworking it as husband and wife, and finding voices that we really want to get out there and project more through our own platform. And so, yeah, good to come.
Well, I think it would be great tonight to wrap up with an encouragement for our young people, because you know we have a room full of young people watching right now, and you're able to go back there and take some question and answers earlier this evening. And especially for our girls, can you just give them a word of encouragement on what it means and how they can live out their convictions in this confusing world on this issue that we're talking about and other biblically centered issues, and also just how they can, you know, be an Esther of this time?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would just say that to get out there, be courageous, be your beautiful self, know that God has given you talents and gifts for a reason, and to let those, you know, shine and flow. And just to be, you know, if you feel scared or if you feel like it's too much for you, to find someone to speak into your life, to mentor you, to cheer you on in a good direction, or to help you, you know, find your strength so that you can better shine in the gifts that you have, and to just have fun, and to know that, like, yes, there's serious and awful issues, but there's also so much fun to be had. And you know, God gives us the life that we have, and to just make the most of it and be willing to try and try again and keep showing up. And that's kind of how I have approached it, is just being willing to keep trying and keep showing up. And sometimes there's some wipeouts along the way, but then there's also some awesome rides to be had as well. And so, yeah, cheering all you young ones on, and you young men, to know that you are our protectors, and we're cheering you guys to lead well and be movers and shakers out there.
Well, thank you for your yes. Bethany, thank you for just being steadfast in your faith, having that unwavering faith. You are a hero to so many people in this room, including myself. So God bless you. Thank you for your courage and being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bethany and Candy. Thank you for the courage and the compassion and the joy with which you have lived your life, Bethany, and the encouragement that is to all of us in our own context. We will all face sharks of different kinds, metaphorically, and may we all respond as well. But friends, our evening has now come to a close. A couple quick reminders. Don't forget what has happened tonight. May these seeds be planted and grow deep, because the work has not done. Quick reminder, if you have been moved to make a donation, please leave the envelope in the bag in the center of the table. In addition, there are beautiful Family Foundation pens that are part of that, and you are encouraged to take those with you so that you can pray for the Family Foundation and then just make another contribution. Also, the early voting has already begun in Virginia, so bank your vote early, because you don't want to have your tire blow out or a hurricane or something happen on election day and your vote not get counted. So go ahead and do that. There is also voter information in your program that you can take with you. So allow that to be a resource and then share that with a friend as well. Finally, there are centerpieces on your tables. I have been educated tonight that one of them is referred to as a peace lily. Those are the ones not in the glass vase. The smaller table centerpieces are called peace lilies, and you may take those home with you. So have an arm wrestling match at your table, and may the strongest man or woman win and walk out proudly with your peace lily. And finally, friends, as we go, our exhortation, because of our theme of the evening, remember, something challenging is going to happen this week. We are going to learn something that we didn't want to know. But in that moment, remember, this is my Father's world. And let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. Have a great night.